Even though I might not get into the convention, I'm going to be in Denver, Colorado, witnessing Barack Obama give his speech and just going to Denver and even standing outside of the stadium would be worth it. I'd imagine that I'd still be able to share stories with other people there. There'd be signs, banners, probably a lot of high-profile people walking around. And it's an adventure. I mean,
There is a moment in the life of every generation, if they are to make their mark on history, where that sense of hope, that thing inside of each of us that says we can do better, when that thing, that spirit comes out into the open, you are ready for change. And when you make a decision, when you believe in something, you can't be deterred.
Okay. Need anything, you call.
Okay.
You call, tell me how it is tonight. If you can stop smiling. It is cool. This is very cool. Come back inspired, okay?
Okay.
Do you want to start?
I'm Bob.
I'm Laura. We're Luke Loper's parents. He's been working passionately for Obama for, gosh, how long now?
Oh.
Since the second he entered the race, maybe?
Yeah. Yeah. He was originally interested in Hillary Clinton, but he really investigated it quite a bit.
I actually jumped on board before I heard Barack Obama speak. I actually was listening to Air America. Just hearing his name, I mean, Barack Obama, that really stood out. So I decided to check his website out. And then when you go to the website, it's just give your contact information. Somebody called me up and I went to a meeting, and then they just sucked me in. It would be torture just running for the President of the United States nowadays. You'd have to be just insane.
I did not choose to run for president because of long-held ambitions. I know that some people have been going through my kindergarten papers, but that is not why I decided to run. I didn't decide to run because I thought it was somehow owed to me, or because I thought it was my turn. I decided to run because of what Dr. King called the fierce urgency of now. Because I believe there's such a thing as being too late. And that hour is almost upon us.
It's not a normal ambition to want to be president. You can't be a regular person and want to be president.
Why would any normal person put themselves through the crap that it takes to become president?
You know, why would someone think that they're the right person for the job? That's really a mystery.
It's a person who is either a very special or a very strange person.
You gotta have great confidence in yourself, and you have to have confidence in your message, and you have to have a belief that you can lead the nation.
Some people feel that they are the person that history's been waiting for.
You have to have a pretty good-sized ego to believe that you're worthy of becoming president of the United States of America. Shy, truly humble people do not become president.
You certainly have to have a big ego. You have to have a thick skin to be able to do that. And I think nowadays you have to have planned this for a while, because it's not easy just to go and jump right in.
The willingness to pay one's dues, to hold lower office for a time,
seems to be a necessary condition these days.
To even think about running for president, to take it into your mind that you could actually do this and start putting together the plan to do it, you got to start way, way, way back. You have to already have some political network because you're probably a governor or a senator or something like that to begin with.
There is that small joke that says every senator getting up in the morning goes to the bathroom, looks in the mirror and says, there's the next president of the United States.
John McCain once said in a moment of total honesty and candor, every single senator looks at the president and says, I could do that.
Hillary Clinton had arguably been running for president since the second term of Bill Clinton. George Bush started running for president really in 1994 when he set his sights on the governor's office in Texas. The elections never stop. There are people in New Hampshire right now that are running for president in 2012.
Any unintended baggage will be subject to confiscation. Any unintended baggage should be reported immediately to an airline representative or law enforcement officer.
The way I feel about campaigning for Obama now, I feel like it's personal to me that I have to get him elected.
We've always volunteered. We do think it's part of the process for people to get
Civic
involved.
duty.
Yeah, it's to pick the right candidate and to study the candidates and not vote blindly. So, I mean, we've been involved in campaigns probably for about 14, 15 years together. So Luke was working with us back when he was 5 or 6, putting up yard signs and stuff for state representatives and state senators.
With his politics, he really doesn't ever leave it. You can tell it's always on his mind.
He doesn't agree with apathy. I mean, he does think that people can make things different and can change things.
We talk about politics as a family a lot, and that can get really depressing. So instead of being depressed about it, he's trying to make a difference.
We were at this rally. Everybody was up against the rails and shaking his hand, and I was maybe in the 4th and 5th row, like behind everybody, crammed up against, and I was like, Obama, shake my hand. And he just like Moses or something, just like separated everybody and reached behind and shook my hand.
If you're the leader of America, you're essentially the leader, you're king of the world almost. It's a big job. It's not a fun job once you're there. It requires somebody that really wants power.
Those are the people we should be suspicious of, people who pursue power for the sake of power. What you really want is someone who pursues power to get things done, to solve problems, to serve people. And that's very difficult to see because all politicians know that they can't appear to be greedy and power hungry. They have to appear to be generous and empathetic. And so what you see may not be what you get.
But there's also, people who want to see good work done.
Many of us are involved in politics not because we just are mad at everything that's going wrong. We see what's going wrong. But we love this country for what is still going right.
You have to truly believe in something larger than yourself. You have to have a belief down here that you want the office to make a difference.
In McCain's case, I think he's genuinely motivated by a sense of civic responsibility. Whether or not you agree with his policies, you have to admit that he is someone who is genuinely concerned about the country.
My friends, I'm running for president because I want to restore trust and confidence in government.
He felt a sense of obligation, and he felt like he's someone that can provide a compass for how the country should be moving. Barack Obama was someone who people persuaded to run. People kept coming to him and saying, you should run, you should run, you should run. I think he was a little reluctant at first, but after enough people tell you that you're the man.
So I chose to run because I believed that every American of every political stripe is weary of the politics that they see right now. They are desperate for a new kind of politics. And most of all, I decided to run because of you. Because I am absolutely convinced that the real agents of change in this country are the American people.
He's always been immersed in politics, but ever since he could pick up a pencil, he's wanted to be an artist. And his passion has been art forever.
I just remember waking up every day at 8 o'clock to get ready for school. And sometimes I was eating Cheerios, watching Tom and Jerry. I'd just have a little ball of clay I'd work with. And then after a while, my mom just gave me a sketchbook and I draw a bunch of pictures. And I just wanted to draw really well.
After school, Luke is involved in as many sports as he can. He likes track, he likes weightlifting, he likes pole vaulting. He would get into everything if he could.
If he doesn't have something to do, he'll go running for 10 miles. He just can't stop. He's constantly going, constantly moving. And I think even after the lights are out and everybody's, heading to bed, he's online trying to, find out the latest political news or reading up on events. So he's very well studied for somebody who's still in high school.
There is certainly a school of thought that you have to be crazy to go through what it takes to become the president.
You have to be really kind of twisted to do this in the first place, because you're going to be away from any semblance of sanity for a very long time.
The process of achieving the job is so degrading that it really takes someone that's willing to put up with a lot of bad chicken.
You are under the gun all the time. Everybody's taking pot shots at you.
Your life is not your own. Everybody knows every detail of your past life.
Well, in addition to obviously the physical side, where you're going one event after another, especially in the early states, is the mental side, the psychological side, knowing that anything you say, as they say on the TV shows, will be held against you.
It's grueling enough just living day to day and having to travel like that, but being in front of people and being scrutinized and trying to get your message across in front of the lights and the cameras, it's got to really break it down.
You're going to be stripped down and beaten up.
You have to have that heart of a champion, which is whatever happens, fight one more round, because he or she who can always fight one more round eventually wins.
I tell you, I can't imagine. You sit and go through something like this, the number of months that you have to go through, the sacrifice, you have no life.
Just the rigors, the pressure of a campaign, just the travel, just the physical toll. I mean, I've said stupid things on the campaign trail simply because I'm so tired.
You'll get up at 5 o'clock, get ready for the morning shows. You're usually on set for 7 o'clock broadcasts. Then you'll do a breakfast. Then you'll fly to the next city and you'll do a lunch. You'll do a rally. You may or may not have a dinner. You'll have an evening rally that'll last probably a couple hours. You meet donors or campaign workers before or after, and we finish between 9 and maybe 11 o'clock at night, and then you're up at 5 doing it again the next day.
And you have to have an unbelievable work ethic. Almost always the lazy candidate loses. You have to at least appear that you are working really hard to get people's votes so they feel like they're giving you your vote because you've earned it.
The sacrifice and the commitment, the discipline that it requires, 5, 6, 7 events a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week on the road is absolutely exhausting.
When things are coming at you faster than the world's fastest video game, it's very hard to think straight. And you give up all of your preoccupations, all of your hobbies, all of, the routines of your life, and you have to be able to, and you give up sleep. You have to be able to do really well without sleep.
They go from Iowa to New Hampshire, down to South Carolina, and they go from stop to stop to stop.
They see another candidate spending an extra dime, they got to spend a quarter. Another candidate taking an extra event, they got to add 2.
This is probably my last speech before the vote tomorrow. I want to, maybe there's another one. I don't know what my schedule is, but there may be some more, you poor folks.
I was just here. I like it so much I had to come back.
It constantly creates this sort of ongoing arms race. It's like an escalation of campaign warfare, and it's seemingly unending.
Who wants to say that, hey, I got 3 more hours sleep, but I lost 2 stops, and I may have lost that state? None of them.
When the press asked me, says, who's tougher, you or Mike Huckabee? I said, Mike Huckabee's a lot tougher.
It's as much of an endurance contest as it is anything else.
There's no way I could go on this campaign trail doing interviews 18 hours a day and giving the speeches that he has been doing all day long.
We marvel at these people because you know that they are a cut above.
I'm not that tough. I am not that tough. I mean, I work out on the total gym, I'm right, but I'm not that tough.
When this radio show's done, if I want to just crawl in a little ball and hide at my house for a weekend and not talk to anybody, I can do that. In a candidate in an intense campaign like this, they just don't get that time.
You know, I personally think that's a good thing, because being President of the United States is an extraordinarily difficult job, especially in this 24/7 news culture that we're in now. There are no breaks.
The major task is proving that you're not unworthy of being president in the process of pursuing the job.
What the American people want to know is, can you handle yourself?
Anybody who can survive this environment and stay on top of their game, they have shown that they have the ability to be the President of the United States.
If you think a presidential primary is tough or an election is tough, you know, a nuclear threat is tougher. Going to war is tougher.
The candidate grows so that whoever ultimately wins, I think, is ready to step in and at least start to be the president.
We're definitely a funny bunch. My dad is definitely way more lefty than I am. He's borderline Green Party. My mom's more a moderate-leaning Democrat. My grandma is Republican, and then my sister and my brother, they decline the state. So usually it's my dad and I fighting about issues, and then my dad and I fighting my grandma over an issue, and then everybody else just putting their 2 cents in. We love each other, and I respect their opinions, but we definitely disagree. We usually watch a movie at 8 o'clock. My dad used to be a film critic, so he'd have to deal with a lot of B movies, and the perfect B movies are zombie movies. And he'd watch so many of them that finally my mom started watching them with them, and then at a young age they got me watching them, and then any new zombie movie that comes out, we just kind of have to watch it. It's just the fact that we're all enjoying the same movie, whether it be good or not.
Anytime you run for a public office like the presidency, you're sacrificing your family. Your family becomes part of the fishbowl that is under observation 24/7.
It is so tough for human beings to put themselves, and more importantly, their families, up to that type of criticism day in and day out.
Once a person announces for president, their whole family is fodder.
It's very tough on families, and the higher you go in the political spectrum, a race for president, for example, the tougher it gets on families. I think that's by far the hardest thing for candidates.
You're away from your family, or you force your family to be on the campaign trail.
I can't wait to be your first lady, because I think it is going to be too cool.
People who thought they were marrying a law school professor or the editor of the Law Review are suddenly subject to the most intense scrutiny for every dress, every string of pearls.
I cannot tell you what it means to me and what it does for my heart when I see so many people supporting my husband the way that they do.
The children are put on the spot.
There are some advantages to having so many sons, and you know, we've got them like scattered around the country. Nick and Chloe, the twins, we are so happy that they're here.
And if you don't put the children on the spot, people think you're not a good parent, which is the saddest part.
Chelsea and Bill have been working across the state, and I want to thank everybody for being so kind to them.
One of the bravest things the Clintons did in '92 was to say, Chelsea's an adolescent, she's in junior high school, we're not going to subject her to all this pain of personal exposure. So it looked like Hillary wasn't much of a mother. Doing the right thing made her look bad because everybody else puts the kids out like props.
We've been traveling all together. I have Jack with me, who's 7, Emma Claire, who's 9, Kate over here, who's 25.
The kids get used to it, but it's a terrible thing to get used to, being daddy's prop.
And so really your family is sacrificed for this, which is ironic because we demand family values, and yet we set up a process that requires you not to really live a good life with your family.
Less than a year ago, his speech at the Universal City Walk Amphitheater at 5,000 people. With 80,000 people, this convention is going to make the Universal speech look microscopic. I don't imagine that it would be too hard to get into the convention. Nonetheless, it's been really hard to contact people. I don't even know where they're selling tickets, but I assume outside of the stadium, You could probably still hear Barack Obama speaking. Just the sheer amount of people that are going to go, the historic nature, it's going to be freaking awesome.
Currently, we're in Denver, Colorado. We're in a cab getting driven to the Mile High Stadium. Barack Obama is going to give his acceptance speech to about 80,000 people, estimated. I assume there's going to be more because there are going to be protesters, people outside.
So who are you voting for?
Obama.
Obama?
Yeah.
Seems like you and everybody else in Denver are voting for Obama.
Yeah. I did before for John Kerry. And I vote for Democrat Eloise.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you excited about Obama? Or?
Oh yeah, too much. For a while I didn't even know if I was going to come to this whole event. It's just so hard to get tickets.
What kind of personality? I think you need to be larger than life a little bit, and yet accessible. You have to be down to earth and larger than life at the same time. Hopefully while being very pleasant looking and speaking well. It would also help if you're qualified to be president, but we don't always get that.
You need this leadership, charisma, trust component that is almost unquantifiable, but you know it when you see it.
I think the American people are looking for some leadership, somebody who's dynamic, who talks to the people.
America needs leadership that is consistent.
Leadership that will tell us the truth and actually lead.
The president is the only politician in the entire country that everybody votes on.
We need a leader that is going to be able to lead and break down the barriers and get things done.
Leadership is not about being right.
Even when it sounds politically risky to vote a certain way, that I've taken that stance.
Leadership means that you are both right and people have followed you. Dennis Kucinich had exactly the message of probably the majority of Democrats. They believe in universal health care. They believe that the war in Iraq was wrong. And what Dennis and Ron Paul have never realized is that they can point to all their years in Congress and they can point to all the right votes they've taken. The problem is they've taken it in isolation. And ultimately, leadership requires followership.
Personality matters. It matters in voting and it matters in governing.
Let's take Huckabee as an example. If people really only voted on character and personality.
This is my mom. Oh, is that your mom? You better take good care of her. I try to. He does.
My God, that man is charming. I mean, he's sort of Will Rogers half the time. He's very clever, he's very articulate, and he's as homey as you could be. John McCain has a brilliant, you're a special friend ability with individuals. John McCain can get anybody to have a good time with him.
The thing about charisma is that there's no way to, put your finger on it. It's a gut feeling.
How smart does a president have to be? Surprisingly, you don't have to be a genius. It would be a disaster if we let the presidency be governed by philosophers or political scientists who may have high IQs but may not have the people skills that are necessary to govern, may not have the empathetic skills to see what needs to be done and to feel what needs to be done.
Looks matter. The more attractive you are as a person, man or woman, the better chance you have at being elected president. Taller people do better. People with hair do better than people without hair. It's not to say that one candidate has to have all of those items, because very, very few people actually fit the bill perfectly. And if they do, you probably say they look too presidential, like a Mitt Romney, for example. He looks like he comes out of central casting as somebody says, all right, we need an actor for president in this movie. Go get me that one that looks like Mitt Romney off the shelf.
At the beginning, people really didn't think Obama had it in him, but he's done a lot of groundbreaking things. He's started his campaign super early. Like, everybody was amazed at how early the Democrats started campaigning. I also like the fact that he doesn't smear anybody. Obama tends to appeal to a wider variety of people. Every day just makes me more proud that I've worked for him. I'm taking notes. What is necessary to get elected in 2008?
Honesty.
Be credible, be the truth that you speak.
deal with the issues that matter.
I think the most important characteristic that an individual should have for whom we should vote is character. You know, somebody that you can trust.
Because that's what you deserve from a president. Somebody who's going to tell you the truth.
What does it take to get elected president? Hopefully it would take some honesty and some integrity and some principles.
I like candidates that tell me things that I don't want to hear because that means they're speaking from the heart.
What I want to see in my president is someone who's genuine. I want to believe what he has to say. I want to know that he's going to come through on the promises that he's making.
Well, I agree and believe that people will tell you that they're looking for honesty. I'm not sure that when they're in the voting booth, that's really actually the issue at hand. Because almost everybody is going to tell you that dishonesty goes with politics.
You need to at least be able to pretend that you're genuine and are a person of the people.
So many candidates, they'll be asked a question and they'll spin it into something that they wanted to convey.
This honesty dimension is weird because to have voters saying that and yet believing probably, if you were to probe their attitudes a bit, that they're all politicians anyway. They're all dishonest.
The thing to a voter is, why should I believe you're going to do any more for me than the other liars?
We've never believed these politicians were honest folks. We have this vision in our public consciousness of a golden age of American politics where they dealt with lofty, high-minded ideas and all our politicians were great and honest and the like. But I think that's more myth than reality.
You shade the truth. People kind of know you're shading the truth, but they're willing to believe you because they don't like the other guy anyway.
You know the difference within 5 minutes between somebody who's speaking with passion and soul about something they truly believe, something that comes inside them, as opposed to somebody who's academic or philosophical, or it just comes from up here. They figured out what a politician's supposed to say.
It's honesty, but tell me what I want to hear. And do it in a credible way. Tell me what I want to hear in a credible way so I can believe that you're telling me the truth.
They say what you want to hear, and you'll see different news segments where in one city they'll say one thing, in another city they'll say another thing. I think you got to be consistent.
Shifting back and forth, that's why people hate politicians. They think they're slick and they think they're trying to manipulate us.
Politicians should be allowed to change their minds, as should all human beings, based on new information, on changing circumstances, on unanticipated events.
Of course, we want people who are flexible enough to change their minds.
What the American public doesn't like, though, is when you seem to do an opportunistic turn, where you do something for your own benefit. There's a difference between honestly and honorably changing your mind and flip-flopping. I would like to believe that a candidate, an adult, can look at new information and change his or her mind. I mean, that's the sign of intelligence, the sign of wisdom. We need to give candidates room to change their minds because human beings have to change their minds. The world is not fixed in stone.
You never see a time when these folks aren't on message, where they can just be themselves because they're terrified that someone with a camera or a recorder might pick them up saying something that's halfway controversial.
We have the internet, we have YouTube, we have you, we have everybody out there, and so the media is not just the big three anymore. Now there's cable, it's 24 hours. We get things off the web, we get things off print, we get things off of our embeds who have small cameras, and so candidates can be made or broken by moments that they never planned.
The fear of a gaffe really makes a lot of the candidates very nervous. In a way, it's created a sort of sanitized campaign.
There will be no $233 million bridge to an island in Alaska with 50 people on it when I'm President of the United States. There will be no more bridges to nowhere.
The closer you can remain to script, the better off you are, ironically. The less real you are, sometimes the better off you are as a candidate.
You want to be president? You've got to know Iowa, you've got to know New Hampshire.
We in Iowa have such a special role to play in assisting the rest of the nation in evaluating the candidate.
The momentum that a candidate gets from winning New Hampshire and Iowa is almost impossible to stop.
With every presidential cycle, Iowa becomes more important.
The great thing about Iowa and New Hampshire, the small states early on, is that
people have a chance to actually meet the candidates before they get into the bubble. Once they get into the bubble, completely surrounded by security, removed from the media, removed from the public, largely waging campaigns on television, it's very hard to have the interaction.
We've done this often enough that we're pretty spoiled. That you expect to actually meet the candidate and maybe have dinner with them and have them wash your car.
Locals really get a chance to meet every candidate. There are people that won't make a decision until they meet everybody twice.
I think I heard somebody say this time that they were deciding between Biden and Edwards, and they'd only met Biden twice.
If you can say, I shook Obama's hand, or I got to see him speak in a room of 15 people instead of 3,000, it makes a big difference.
I think we appreciate the fact that people are willing to come out here when it's like walking on the moon. It's so cool.
You have to be committed. When I landed in Des Moines last night, it was minus 15 degrees chill factor, and that is not for the faint of heart.
It's dark and it's cold and there's ice on the sidewalks, and you got to go all across this state for a year if you really want to be president of the United States. And it takes that kind of commitment on the part of a candidate.
Obama would not have become the Democratic Party's nominee without Iowa. And to sneak in under the radar and to do well gives you an incredible boost. And that's partly Obama's appeal. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's this new guy that gave him instant credibility. It put him on the radar screen. It then allowed him to legitimately ask for money as a legitimate candidate.
We are in New Hampshire, at the political center of the world, at least for the next 48 hours.
You mentioned the New Hampshire primary, and I think that begrudgingly the rest of the nation takes a look at us and looks at the results and looks at the turnout and the whole bit. And I think that they will have to admit that New Hampshire knows how to do this and how to do it right.
The New Hampshire voter is the most informed, decent, issue-oriented voter I've ever faced.
People here have a natural tendency and ability to stand right up and ask this towering politician that you see on TV real questions that matter.
Even though it's a very small state, a very sort of unrepresentative state, it matters because it's the first primary.
This year, for this primary, 526,000 New Hampshireites went out and voted for their guy to take ownership of their vote, to do their civic responsibility and their duty. And I think a lot of New Hampshire folks look at it as a duty.
In a state like New Hampshire, you can definitely see the personality of the candidates who are running when they're forced to interact with voters.
We love being in New Hampshire. We've loved this last year. The only thing we haven't liked about this year is I haven't gotten as much time at Lake Winnipesaukee as I used to get.
In New Hampshire, where you can see the candidates and you hear from your neighbors who've seen them, and this has been going on for a year plus, you get a sense of what the candidate's like.
New Hampshire does it right, and we deserve to stay first for the next go-around. Whether that happens or not, that remains to be seen.
The rest of the country thinks Iowa and New Hampshire have too much of an impact over the nominating process, and I think right now they have a point. It used to be that Iowa and New Hampshire really didn't determine who the president was going to be. They vetted the field, they cleared out the kind of the dead wood, the people that really didn't have a chance, and then the other candidates fought it out over the next several months.
You really do have to be strong early. Iowa, New Hampshire. You have to be out in front early. I think John McCain was 2 weeks away from being out of the race. New Hampshire kept him in the race. And then as other candidates started to drop out, Huckabee started to go down, Romney started to implode, he became almost by default the nominee.
These people get through Iowa and New Hampshire and they think they're exhausted. Then they've got 48 more states.
Ron Paul was definitely an interesting candidate.
Ron Paul represents a movement inside the Republican Party to which I belong in a lot of ways, and it's a post-Cold War anti-interventionist foreign policy.
It was that consistency in the defense of the Constitution which has gained so much momentum for us and so much support.
Ron Paul, with very little money but with a strong ideological base, was able to have a greater impact than his numbers might have indicated. Ron Paul really did appeal to one small segment, and that was the libertarian-oriented Republicans and independents. And that segment is a very committed segment. They really believe And when you have believers, they'll go out and they'll put up signs and they'll march and they'll do all the things you need to do to get your organization going.
His volunteers went above and beyond. We kind of called them missionaries.
So let's stand up America and take it back, because the last election was just a blatant slap in the face of all the citizens that paid for that. They fought for freedom and all they got was the Patriot Act. To say it is sad, we go to war but we don't want to pay for that. Ron Paul, get rid of the inflation tax, the gas tax and the feds, time to face the facts. For Ron Paul, if you work hard and you break your back now, before they pull the Bush card and get them back down, you got a fully equipped army in your own town. I'll bet you never even thought of it. The revolution, all I ask is that you be a part of it. Yeah, Ron Paul for president 2008. There's still hope for America, it's almost too late. Ron Paul for president 2008. It's time to stand up for freedom, all we still gotta say.
Paul had a very devoted following. That message really was powerful. When you've got both the Democratic and Republican parties as big government parties, they believe in different forms of big government, but both parties are big government parties today. Here you've got an alternative, a real difference. And so he was able to generate a lot of heat.
Ron Paul's Christmas Vacation is our project here in Iowa. There's about 250 students participating. They're scattered across the state in 7 different camps. It varies from 10 people in one camp to 70 people in another camp. And each day we're getting up and doing relatively the same thing. We're canvassing during the day, and in the evening doing phone banking.
Our supporters are very energized and working harder than ever. And I worry a little bit about these young people who go out and stand for 10 hours a day in the cold.
We get up about 8 o'clock. We have a morning meeting at 8:30 and get on the bus, and we're on the road. Hopefully we're here in Des Moines by 10 o'clock, knocking on doors, talking to Iowans about turning out to vote for Ron Paul.
Just got people from all over the country who are just extremely dedicated. Me and my wife were newlyweds, haven't changed our last name or anything yet. We flew down from visiting my family for Christmas just to be here, and you know, the joke is it's been kind of like our honeymoon.
What do you think of the camp?
It's awesome. It's a lot bigger than the one I was at in before Christmas. Not really much going on there. No internet access really, no phone access. Couldn't really do anything. There's a dog, and that was about our entertainment for the week. A dog? Yeah, a dog named Aristotle.
Hi, is Holly available? Yes, my name is Diana, and I am a student volunteer with the Ron Paul campaign.
This is my first election that I'll be eligible to vote in, but I think that a really big thing this year is the issues, and I think a lot of people are starting to understand that, and a lot of people are starting to vote not on the candidate, but on the issues, and I think that that's where Ron Paul has a leg up.
Well, thank you so much for your support. You have a great new year.
We could be lounging around at home, watching playing video games and watching DVDs on our Christmas vacation in our sweats, but you know, we're passionate. Not only do we feel like we're doing something good, but we're having a great time.
If it wasn't for school, we could be doing this all year.
You know, it's easy to say that Ron Paul was unsuccessful. I think he was very successful, but not in gaining the Republican nomination. He animated a tremendous number of young people and independent voters, and really the sort of voters who tend not to be strong Republicans.
Actually, one of the volunteers I got to know, he said that Ron Paul listened to him. He said that Ron Paul was more of a person than the other candidates because he had actually been able to meet Ron Paul and talk to him for maybe a brief second or so before Ron Paul had to go on his way. The fact that Ron Paul had reached out to him is somewhat similar to how Obama works, because he has started a movement. If he isn't elected, we're still gonna have this army of volunteers that want to change America, and they're going to change America nonetheless. As of right now, I am 17 years of age. I was born December 3rd, 1990. That means that I can't even register to vote in time for the general election.
Hello, this is Luke Loper, and I'm a local volunteer with the Barack Obama campaign.
So that means that I gotta work as hard as I can to get other people to vote for him.
Hi, this is Luke with the Barack Obama campaign.
Cardboard cutouts on the floor. People wish that you were more like what they wanted you to be. Eventually they won't have much of you at all, in their theology. The walls are closing in on you. You cannot be contained at all. I don't want to make you small. I don't want to fit you in my pocket.
When people say grassroots organizing, I didn't have any idea what they were talking about. I kind of had this feeling, it was like, well, somebody's sending in $5. Okay, great. Little did I know it was going to be us sitting here making calls after call after call.
A grassroots campaign has two parts. One is make local noise, picnics, signs, bumper stickers, rallies. The really most important part of the grassroots is friends contacting friends about getting to the polls.
I'm a great believer in the power of social networking, encouraging supporters to reach out to their friends, their family, their colleagues, their coworkers. They are the strongest, most credible messengers of all.
Ever since Lance, who is Luke's older brother, has been able to vote, we've pretty much gotten together as a family to discuss as a block. We figure, we're not going to cancel each other's vote. We're going to, try to come to an agreement on how we should be voting. Luke has always been invited to this, even though he's not even old enough to vote yet. And this allows him the opportunity not just to hear what we think, but to offer his opinion. So he gets to have some input in the way people are going to vote. Right now, our caucus is about 4 or 5 people, which is pretty good, I think, and I think we have
one
minor,
phone in.
yeah, one phone in. We have minor disagreements sometimes, but we usually come up and decide that this is the way we're going to vote.
In my limited experience in politics, this has been the most well-organized, most effective campaign I've been a part of. My parents even tell me, "Boy, Luke, you lucked out, didn't you?"
A couple of years ago, he was working in the congressional race on the Democratic side here in California. So he was one of the lead volunteers. He was definitely inner circle, which is pretty good for a kid who's 15, 16 years old to be taken so seriously by a candidate. The candidate lost, but he kept going on.
The first thing any campaign does when they want to create grassroots is they look for people who already have tentacles. They look for a local octopus, and then slowly you start to get volunteers. You just find people who really like to get people out there and involved.
Sometimes when we had meetings, it would be like us and 2 other people. It was kind of depressing. But then we had like 35 people. Even the organizers were amazed. And then there were a bunch of college students there. They had a bunch of enthusiasm.
Without the grassroots, Barack Obama would not have been the Democratic nominee. Senator Clinton beat Senator Obama in all the states with open primaries, or she got more delegates in the states with primaries. He won because they went after the caucus states, where it's a get out the vote grassroots organization. And they didn't do it because they're geniuses. They did it because they thought they were going to be poor and wouldn't have enough money for the big states, so they started with the caucuses.
Non-stop phone banking, non-stop sign waving, non-stop data entry.
Being an organizer is tough. You are working long hours, you are underpaid, you're underappreciated, you have to deal with rejection, you're eating cold pizza late at night in the office. And so now I've got hundreds of young organizers all across the country who are pouring their heart and soul into this campaign, who are so inspired and idealistic and whose energy is just infectious.
They look good on stage and they're cheap volunteer labor on their campaigns. That's the real reason that these people have campaign organizations at colleges and universities. They're not counting on the vote, or they better not count on the vote. But those are good bodies to have working for you, because they'll work lots of long hours for little or no pay. Give them pizza and beer at the end of the night, and they'll work for days.
It's really taken its toll. I've gained the dependency on coffee. Some classes I'll find myself getting micro naps or blurred vision just out of complete exhaustion.
He doesn't take a day off. Some days are less than others. But he's always got, some phone calls or some website to get to or some chat to be involved with. But I just hope he's getting his homework done.
They advise us to put down every event on the calendar, because what if a supporter's like, well, I like to support, but I don't know the next event. So we have to write all these events down. I was having coffee and it was late at night. And
he does the Obama meetings at least once a week.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Our purpose today is to help draft platform statements to actually be submitted to the Democratic National Committee.
A lot of kids are very disillusioned. One of the reasons why I taught junior high was kids came out of junior high and they were looking forward. And so many kids in high school, hey, you're older, you're 4 years older, you've got 4 more years of experience, and they've looked around, and from what they've seen and been told, they've lost some hope. They don't see the chance to make it better. He's looked around in the same ways, and he's seen that you can. I heard a phrase once, if I might quote from someone else, and they said, this is the kind of kid you'd hope your daughter would bring home. And I would say, this is the kind of kid that Obama would want his daughter to bring home.
Candidates are experts in rhetoric. They've been trained in rhetorical strategies.
I'm not asking you to elect me to the ruling class. You are the ruling class.
I'll get Osama bin Laden. If I have to follow him to the gates of hell, I'll get him and bring him to justice.
It's about storytelling.
I have a story to tell. I got an email recently.
I have a wonderful friend in Little Rock who is a school teacher.
Oh my God, nobody understands how important those stories are.
They learn by example. They see what's worked in the past.
This is our moment. This is our time.
This is not about me, this is about us. Is as old as the American Revolution, the sense of we the people are going to do this.
Various campaigns will put forth a basic sort of narrative about their campaign. The sort of story that they want to tell.
You have to have a narrative that strikes a chord with voters.
Not all narratives are created equal.
John Edwards' narrative is class warfare, the two Americas.
I grew up when I was young in tough neighborhoods, mill towns, mill villages, where you had to fight to survive.
His stories have stayed the same. They've gotten a little angrier.
If this is the America we believe in, we better start fighting for it, because it's being taken away from us.
A lot of candidates have tried class warfare. I don't think any of them have ever won, going all the way back to William Jennings Bryan.
I think Mitt Romney, for instance, wants to put forth the narrative that he can solve problems and is a hands-on leader based on his business experience.
The effective manager.
And I spent 25 years in business.
We know about the Olympics. What else do we know? Olympics.
When I went to the Olympics, I realized we had a real financial problem.
Mrs. Clinton's narrative is experience.
Experience is probably the most important asset this time. People want somebody with the experience who can go on the job and be president tomorrow.
She gets much more into the nuances of her policy and what she's accomplished in the past.
You have to define yourself in part by the battles you have been in.
John McCain, I suppose, is trying a variation of the war hero narrative, and also, of course, he is the maverick.
24 years, the United States Congress, I have never asked for nor received an earmark or pork barrel project, and I'm proud of that record, and I will make sure that every other member of Congress has that record, whether they happen to like it or not.
The McCain narrative really works very well within that framework, because McCain is this war hero, he was tortured, you know, he went to the Naval Academy, the whole deal.
One of the great honors and privileges of my life is for a guy who stood fifth from the bottom of his class at the Naval Academy to run for President of the United States.
McCain has the greatest personal story you could imagine. The war veteran, prisoner of war in Vietnam, terrible injuries. He's suffered so much for the country, and he's given so much to the country. It's a tremendous message. It's a storybook, personal history.
Virtually any time anybody attacks John McCain, they begin with, John McCain is an honorable man who has served our country. We just disagree on this issue, right? Which is a very much more difficult tone, and it speaks to the power of the McCain narrative.
Barack Obama's narrative is audacity of hope.
He's a change agent who wants to bring the war in Iraq to an end, and he's always believed that.
We don't need somebody who knows how to play the game better in Washington. We need an end to the game playing in Washington. That's why I'm running for President of the United States of America.
Barack Obama was a very different kind of candidate in the sense that he's speaking in poetry. And he's creating a vision. And he's saying, I see an America that's different.
A lot of moving the masses with your speeches is the hope they have for you and what you mean to them. Barack Obama uses the line sometimes, "This isn't about me, this is about you." It's not an original line, it's a line people like Obama have been using for at least a century. But it speaks to the fact of how excited people are at what he represents about the good in America and the kinds of changes that are taking place.
His popularity and his power, I think, derives from his ability to create connections with voters.
I remember after one of Obama's speeches, Luke said it sounded like Obama was talking to him and addressing his issues and in the way that he wanted the issues addressed.
It gets to a real personal level that even if he's talking to a million people, he still singles you out.
Luke feels that Obama is articulating the thoughts that he's trying to put into words, but just hasn't gotten there yet. He doesn't have the experience, the worldview that Obama obviously has.
Part of what attracts people to him is that they feel inspired by what he says, and that doesn't happen so much anymore.
I intend to be so persuasive here this evening that the light bulb will go off above your head and you'll say, Obama's my guy.
Obama has risen to his popularity on the fact that he can deliver what many find is an inspiring speech.
When Senator Clinton said, you campaign with poetry, but you govern with prose, well, you're always campaigning, and so you always need poetry, and you're always trying to get things done, so you always need prose.
Even though it's debased now, without rhetoric, this country would not function the way that it does. It really is the cornerstone of democracy.
Voting for president is a very visceral feeling by people. So I've gone around Iowa and all the other states, and they're interested in issues. What they're really interested in is the person. They're trying to take his or her measure. As my dad would say, they're sizing them up. And they want to know, are they authentic? Are they up to the job? Do they understand the way real people live and suffer? And they think that crises will come and go, some of them totally unexpected, and that if you are a good person with good judgment, that you'll be a good president.
Voters are thinking about what the world is like right now, and they're voting on what the world is like right now, and they're voting on what they don't like about the last president. And so thinking about what kind of person they are is just ingrained in us.
This year especially, it seems like people really want an anti-war candidate, and it would be great if we got one.
Someone who's going to fix the mess that Bush made and keep us from getting into more messes.
A president that wants to get back to the basics of family values.
People need to trust the candidates now. I think trust is huge.
You have to trust a person. I mean, any politician can say anything, but if you look in the eyes and you can see he's a good guy, sometimes it just takes that, you know?
You need to know who God is, first of all.
If you know God, like, you have morals, you know what's right and wrong.
And you need to be able to get our troops home. And everyone needs health insurance.
Honesty.
Honesty?
With oneself, and to listen to the people for a change, and not to the lobbyists who pay the way.
To get elected takes maybe not being honest. The people with the most integrity seem to not make it.
Yes.
So I think integrity does not work.
I want a president who starts doing nothing. I don't want the federal government to do things. I want them to stop doing things.
There's a lot of evidence to support, or not support really, how voters make decisions, because really it's very difficult to figure out why a voter does what he or she does.
Voters are not looking to immerse themselves in specific details of policy. And that makes a certain amount of sense. I mean, that's why we have political leaders, to figure that stuff out. voters can't be expected to be experts in everything.
The specifics of policy issues, which is, a common mistake that presidential candidates make, aren't as important as all those other character qualities.
Since the Kennedy-Nixon debates in the 60s, the American election has been more about choosing a candidate and a marketing product as opposed to a statesman and a president. Voters love TV campaigning. They want to know what's going on. And the candidates know to be effective on TV, you got to give them a 25-second soundbite, not a 25-page policy treatise. It tends to oversimplify things, which means that the voters may not be casting votes on fully substantive, informed ideas, but more who they like.
There is research that shows if a candidate shakes hands with somebody on their way to the polls, they're more likely to vote for them. Again, it's basic humanity. It's normal sort of stuff. We respond to somebody who talks with us and says we like them because we can look them in the eye and say, yeah, they seem like a regular person. I guess I'll vote for them.
In the end, it's remarkable. I love to watch the voters and talk to them because they really take it seriously and they reach inside themselves and say, this is what I'm going to do.
One thing that the public tends not to know is just how constrained the president is. The public should get a harder dose of reality on what the limits of presidential power can be, so that their expectations are not so inflated.
The biggest misconception that voters have is that somehow the president has control over the federal government, that the president can get things done in Washington.
We're going to enact a fair tax in America and give everybody a chance to finally say to the IRS, goodbye, you don't exist anymore.
Our government is designed specifically for things not to get done. It's designed consciously 200 plus years ago to make sure legislation is passed slowly and deliberatively and messily with lots of compromise. The people who are running for office, they get it, they know it, but they know that you don't know it.
I will fix this system, and then we will fix Social Security, we will fix Medicare, and I want to tell you climate change and clean energy will be my priority, and I want to give our kids a clean planet.
They can manipulate your thinking based on raising false promises that they can't deliver on. Electing somebody to office with the idea that they're going to get something done in Washington is setting yourself up for disappointment.
What's the deal, man?
CJ is somewhere. Look for CJ. Short, red hair.
You know Robin?
I don't think he was the same.
Oh. Okay. We're gonna call Vickery. Say what? Actually, you probably. Okay, he's gonna hustle over there right now. Right now, leave now, go to the Sheraton. At 16th, go back up to 16th and go down the mall that way.
Okay, thank you.
Would you ever like to be president someday?
Yeah.
Yeah? What would you do? If you were president, what would you do?
Have no school ever.
If you could vote, who would you vote for?
Obama.
Obama? Why would you vote for Obama?
Because he has a loud voice.
A loud voice.
They say they want to go after the youth vote, but they frankly don't care about the youth vote. And the reason is because young people don't vote. One of my rules of thumb about politics is if a candidate says they're going to win an election because they're going to get the young people's vote, they've got an L on their head. They're going to lose.
Young people don't have the kinds of social responsibilities that older people have that are linked to political issues. There's just a structural reason why young people are less involved in politics, because they don't see the immediate impact on their day-to-day lives. Plus, their day-to-day lives are unsettled. They haven't established roots. They don't own a home where they have to pay taxes and so forth.
But that doesn't mean that young people aren't important, and it's not an important strategy to go after the youth vote or to say you're going after the youth vote. Because if you're running for office, what's a more attractive picture for you to have on stage with people around you? A lot of young people, college-age people, fresh-faced, dynamic, sense of optimism, or a bunch of senior citizens sitting in their walkers and gray hair and stuff? Which is the more compelling picture? Well, of course it's the young people. It makes you seem like an optimistic, dynamic, forward-thinking person rather than somebody who's dealing with the old folks and their Social Security checks. But who do you really want to go after on election day? You want grandma and grandpa behind you because you know they're going to show up.
93 and 94.
Wow.
All right. And they had to come to vote today. Do you want to talk to the camera? No.
We'd love to talk to you. You probably voted before, huh?
A lot of times.
I'd love to talk to you if that's okay.
Tell them who you voted for. We voted for Hillary Clinton.
How do you capture the romance of an election? How do you draw in the hardest group to draw in? The group 18 to 24 who participate at the lowest level, vote at the lowest level. How do you get them in? How do you excite them? You excite them with your personality, with a message, with hope. Barack Obama infused his campaign with those things.
One of the reasons Barack Obama reaches young voters is he's so obviously younger than all the candidates. That's part of the appeal, is he's fresh.
There's been a lot of columns about how our generation is the quiet generation. We don't protest, we don't get involved. I think this is going to be a big change. I think our generation is tired of a lot of the things that are going on, a lot of the policy that's being made. These are all things that are going to affect us in the future, and we're starting to realize that.
I'm right next to the police car thing. Oh, I'm on the corner. Okay. I'm directly in front of it.
Sure.
Oh, hey. There she is. Hey. Here, thank you.
That one that I just handed you, was that this one? It's already activated. You have to fill this information down here.
Okay.
So you don't need to do the activating thing. And then I think this is the only part that you're turning in. I'm Luke's delegate, and yay.
Hey, what do you think of Luke here anyway?
Oh, he's great. He's great. I wish he lived closer to me.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us what it takes to get elected president this year?
Oh, I don't know. I only got elected delegate this year. It's people like me and Luke contributing thousands of hours for the campaign over the last year and over the next 10 weeks. So, hard work. It's a lot of hard work.
I got a ticket to go to the convention.
I'm ecstatic that this election has generated so much electricity that everybody's excited about it. That's the first step.
Luke is an optimist. I think he's sometimes way too optimistic. He's optimistic about politics. He's also optimistic about his school grades, no matter how often his optimism is proven wrong. He's an optimist.
Part of my life has been devoted to the Obama campaign that I could have spent being a regular kid. And if he wins, that really means that I worked for something that was not only worth it, but I changed the lives of other people around the country, around the world, influenced the lives of other kids my age who weren't encouraged to be involved in politics and who might not have opportunities if Barack Obama is not the winner.